Death came for Danny Kaye in 1987. Hidden away in his estate was a shocking secret: 89,000 items spanning 70 years, including unproduced scripts and strange letters that cast doubt on our previous assumptions about him. However, his papers did not contain the most shocking discovery. The scandal that nearly derailed his career, the threats that caused him to doubt everything, and the crippling fears he hid from everyone revealed the shadow side of Hollywood's favorite comedian. On January 18, 1911, he entered this world in Brooklyn, New York. He was born to Jacob and Clara Kaminsky. Their origin was in Ukraine, and their journey to the United States was driven by a desire for a brighter future. But they encountered similar financial struggles to countless other families during that era. To put food on the table, Jacob sewed garments for long hours as a tailor. An old Miller Avenue apartment housed Danny's family, his parents, two elder brothers, and grandma. Finding someone to laugh at a house full of bad things was always easy. Danny had a gift for making people laugh with his silly expressions and infectious singing. Danny's humor brightened even the darkest days, and although his family was poor, they were close. When the Great Depression struck in 1929, things took a turn for the worse. When people in Brooklyn lost their jobs, it became very difficult for them to make ends meet. The Kaminskys were no different. Even when times were tough and opportunities were few, Danny maintained his infectious sense of humor. In fact, he might have played it more aggressively. Everyone, not just his loved ones, could benefit from his humor, he discovered. Tom went to Thomas Jefferson High, but he was an outcast the whole time. The show was constantly playing in his head. Because performing was his one true passion, he had no interest in taking lessons. A combination of his love of show business and his need to support himself led him to drop out. He made ends meet by taking any job he could get his hands on. He scooped ice cream and made drinks as a soda jerk at a nearby shop. For a brief period, he was employed to sell insurance. Even his brief stint working for a doctor was short-lived. He started chopping into the office furniture's wood because he was playing around with the dentist drill. Following that, he resigned as a dentist. The death of his mother when he was a little boy devastated him. He needed to escape his grief, which was making him restless. A buddy of his absconded with him to Florida without a second thought. They were able to make ends meet by performing music and singing on street corners. By the time Daniel returned to New York, he had amassed more cash than he had before. Though small, it demonstrated his potential for greatness. He aspired to be famous, so he joined local theater groups. He broke through in the early 1930s as a member of the vaudeville act The Three Torrens. Around that time, he decided to go by a different name. While David Kaminsky was just a name from Danny Kaye's past, the latter felt like a whole new person. Someone born to perform on stage. The world of vaudeville was not an easy one. Singers, dancers, magicians, and comedians all vied for the audience's attention during the high-energy performances. Danny, however, was unique. He never missed a beat and had boundless energy. In 1933, the Three Torrens was on tour. Throughout the United States and even into Asia they traveled. During one performance in Osaka, Japan, the electricity went out due to a storm. It was pitch black in the theater. Danny remained calm. He proceeded to grab a flashlight, stride onto the stage, and began to sing. Until the storm passed, he entertained the crowd with every song he could think of. He was distinctive because of things like this. He wasn't merely a performer, he staged performances. In addition, he performed in the Borscht Belt, another name for the Catskill Mountains. The hotels were famous for hosting live theater, which attracted Jewish families who wanted to spend a vacation there. Danny, like many other great comics, began his career in the Catskills. In between performances, he kept people in stitches as a tumbler. I learned a lot there. He picked up the ability to read people, concoct stories on the fly, and find humor in any given circumstance. His breakthrough came in 1939 with the release of The Straw Hat Review, a musical comedy. On September 29, the performance commenced at the Ambassador Theater in New York. The show's creators saw potential for a Broadway run after seeing it as a summer production at the Pennsylvania Theater Retreat Camp Tampta. Among the group's rising stars were Jerome Robbins, Imogene Coca, and Alfred Drake. Kaye belonged to that group. He considered this performance to be special. He could have made a statement. His enthusiasm, humor, and artistic talent left an impression on everyone who met him. No one would ever guess why his lines would make them laugh until he spoke them. His signature skill was writing entertaining, high-energy songs. Even though it only ran for 75 performances before closing on December 2, Kaye had a significant influence. Not long after that, he began performing at the world-renowned La Martinique Bar, where he first laid eyes on Sylvia Fine. They eventually tied the knot, and she was a gifted writer and musician. She began crafting pieces that would highlight his abilities because she believed he was exceptional. They collaborated to create an original, hilarious, and clever performance. His return to Broadway was swiftly followed by rave reviews. The role that Kaye landed in the 1941 Broadway musical Lady in the Dark altered the course of his life. The Alvin Theater hosted the 467 performances that started on January 23, 1993. Nothing like that show had ever been seen on Broadway before. The story was told in a unique way, delving into the main character's mind through dream sequences. Liza Elliott, portrayed by Gertrude Lawrence, was the leading lady. She struggled with self-confidence despite her fame as a magazine editor. Ira Gershwin created a strange and intimate world by penning the lyrics to the music that accompanied her dreams. In the role that Kaye played, Russell Paxton is an ostentatious fashion photographer. He was the star of the show despite not having the lead role. All it took was one song. More than 50 Russian musicians' names were recited by Kaye in under a minute. It took a lot of self-assurance, the ability to hold your breath, and timing your words precisely to sing the challenging song Tchaikovsky. When Kaye sang it, the audience went absolutely nuts with applause. The house would go silent every night because of how well he played. In contrast, Danny Kaye didn't merely stroll into Hollywood. He exploded onto the scene with an unprecedented level of intensity. Up in Arms, 1944, his debut feature film revolutionized the industry. It was unique among musical comedies because of Kaye's talents. Danny Weems, the character he played, is an elevator operator who goes insane from his health issues and is compelled to enlist in the Army. He displayed his musical abilities, physical comedy, and talk-fast humor simultaneously. Reviewers took note, and people enjoyed it. Kaye became an overnight sensation thanks to the film, which also garnered her 2 Oscar nominations. That wasn't pure chance. One of Hollywood's most prominent directors, Samuel Goldwyn, recognized Kaye's potential early on. To ensure that no other firm could recruit him, he struck a deal with him. Months were spent preparing Up in Arms from June to September 1943. Originally titled With Flying Colors, the title was changed towards the end of production. It featured significant roles for Constance Dowling, Dana Andrews, and Dina Shaw. Harold Arlen and Ted Clare composed the music to suit Kaye's taste. The film made every effort to highlight his strongest suit. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, 1947, was one of Kaye's most famous roles, which he played for the next 3 years. The film was loosely based on a short story by James Thurber. In Hollywood, that tale became an action film. Walter Mitty, the timid editor who relies on daydreaming to escape his mundane existence, was portrayed by Kaye. He goes from fearless pilot to deadly gunman to brilliant surgeon in the blink of an eye. His journey, however, is far larger than he had anticipated when a genuine secret enters his life. The film featured a terrific supporting cast including Boris Karloff, Anne Rutherford, and Virginia Mayo, and the plot was fast-paced and full of unexpected twists and turns. Above all else, though, it featured Kaye in his prime. In a famous scene, he sang "A Gnat of Paris," a song written by his wife Sylvia Fine with difficult-to-understand lyrics. Among Kaye's many talents was the unique ability to blend music and comedy in the memorable musical numbers featured in Symphony for Unstrung Tongue. He became one of Hollywood's most distinctive stars thanks to the success of the film and his performance. In 1949, he started a new job as an inspector general. This musical comedy took its inspiration from a Russian author's play, Nikolai Gogol. The role of Georgy, a nomad who is confused for a high-ranking government official despite his lack of literacy skills, was played by Kaye. With witty one-liners, silly humor, and an accent-changing role, Kaye had all he needed to shine in the film. The plot went beyond mere comedy. A deeper meaning regarding deceit and wrongdoing was conveyed. Georgy, an ordinary man, unwittingly reveals the avarice of influential politicians. Director Henry Koster made sure the film had a serious and humorous plot. One of Kaye's most ambitious projects at the time, the film cost nearly $3 million to produce. Thanks to the Technicolor photography, it looks stunning, but the true star was Kaye's performance. Not many artists of his period were able to do what he did, combine profound themes with astute humor. Unafraid to try new things, though, was Kaye. He had established himself as a top-tier comic by the time he was in his late 50s. In 1959, it was released under the title The 5 Pennies. The play was based on the life of jazz vocalist Red Nichols. Unlike his usual comedic fare, this film had him laughing out loud. Kaye portrayed Nichols, a talented singer who struggles to maintain a healthy work-life balance while pursuing his passion for jazz. Kaye had to put on a more dramatic performance for the role. Excellent work by the supporting actors. Tuesday Weld portrayed Nichols' daughter and Barbara Bel Geddes played his wife. The inclusion of actual jazz legends like Louis Armstrong gave the film a more authentic feel. Famous musicians like Glenn Miller and Jimmy Dorsey were members of Nichols' band, the 5 Pennies. While the film made some changes to Nichols' life, it still captured his love of music and the sacrifices he made for it. While Danny Kaye did become the first Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF in 1954, his involvement with the organization was far from conventional. He met UNICEF chief Maurice Pate while Pate was traveling between England and the US. A fire broke out during the flight, forcing the pilots to abandon their journey. While waiting, Pate informed Kaye about UNICEF's work and the difficulties children around the world encounter. Something about Kaye shifted after she heard what was said. They committed to being together forever. After that conversation, this was no ordinary romance involving well-known individuals. It wasn't enough for Kaye to simply back the cause. He fully embraced it. He met children, parents, and medical professionals in more than 60 countries. The man personally visited towns and hospitals to witness UNICEF's work. He captivated his audience with more than just words. His skills were greatly appreciated by UNICEF. The organization was also beginning its long-term initiatives in nutrition, education, and health at that time, on top of its disaster relief efforts. Kaye made it clear to everyone why this mattered. His charisma, vivacity, and infectious sense of humor made him an instant hit. Throughout his speeches, he avoided using a lot of jargon or speaking down to the audience. Things were made easy for her, he gave them reality. Among his most significant contributions was the 1956 film Task, Children, which chronicled UNICEF's efforts in Asia. There was evidence of UNICEF's efforts to aid disadvantaged children. Viewers left the theater with more than just new information. They also had an emotional reaction. It prompted donations and shifted public opinion. Work was never a break for Kaye. Over the course of his career with UNICEF, he traveled extensively, often to remote locations by himself. His proficiency as a pilot allowed him to reach inaccessible areas. He was deeply committed to this work. It was more than a job to him. The actions he took were noticed. On 1981, he was bestowed the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award. If you're famous and want to use your celebrity for good, this is your Oscar. However, upon receiving the Nobel Peace Prize in 1965, UNICEF became the center of attention. Among those who took the honor home with them was Kaye. His efforts inspired many to follow in his footsteps, which ultimately led to the group's expansion. In 1940, Dan Kaye wed Sylvia Fine. Love wasn't the only plot point in this story. A relationship that would alter the course of his life forever began at that moment. Sylvia was gifted musically and had a gift for identifying talented people. Not only did she have faith in Danny, but she also had the key to his superstardom. Despite sharing a Brooklyn neighborhood, they never crossed paths during their childhood. Everything changed in 1939 when they collaborated on an off-Broadway show. Danny, a budding artist, and Sylvia, a musician, were both on the hunt for employment opportunities. Surprisingly, they were more interdependent than they had realized. In the past, Daniel had completed some odd jobs for Sylvia's dad, the doctor. Numerous jokes were told about that small incident in subsequent years. Sylvia has been crucial to Danny's wealth since their wedding. He rose to fame thanks to several of the songs she composed. Her knowledge of his style was unparalleled. His energy, speed, and ability to make each song his own were all known to her. Sylvia was responsible for penning a number of his early singles, including those from Wonder Man and Up in Arms. There was more to her than that, though. He relied on her to manage his business, advise him on important decisions, and project the image he wanted to project. Their marriage was solid, albeit far from ideal. Separation occurred in the late 1940s between them. The rumor mill had it that Danny was in a relationship with actress Eve Arden, but their differences couldn't be sustained. They reconciled and remained together throughout Danny's life. Many believe Danny and Sylvia took in two girls as adoptives, but that is not the case. Their sole offspring was Danny Kaye. Life began for her in 1946. Right from the start, their family life was kept under wraps. Unlike many Hollywood stars, Danny chose not to let the public in on his personal life. Sylvia was also affected by this. She was always modest and unassuming. She preferred to stay out of the way because she was constantly concerned about Danny's job. An artistic family fostered Danny's development. It appeared like her dad was always quite active. In his pursuit of knowledge, he was always looking for something fresh to pique his interest. Being a dad was always his top priority, even though he had a demanding job. People were created to laugh at Danny Kaye. People laughed at his antics and sharp humor, but they never saw the terror he felt in the days leading up to each performance. He suffered from stage fright throughout his career. Fights were inevitable. He had done this 100 times before, but this time he paced nervously backstage. How much experience he had was irrelevant. He was able to be rescued from the brink by Sylvia Fine, his best friend and wife. She was his constant companion and a major influence on his career trajectory thanks to her gifted songwriting and vocals. Even more importantly, she pinned him down. Before each performance, she reassured him, helped him relax, and explained why he belonged on stage. Only a select few were aware of his utter reliance on her. Danny was just as focused as anyone else. He insisted on perfection in everything he did and could never settle for good enough. Everything from the jokes to the songs to the dance moves had to be spot on. Repeatedly, he altered even the most minute details of plots. As soon as something didn't feel right, he would make the necessary adjustments. Rehearsals were a real pain. Repeatedly, he ensured that the timing was impeccable by doing the same things. Danny considered comedy an exact science, which irritated a few of his co-stars. He persisted until he discovered the optimal approach. Directors and co-stars felt he exerted too much control due to his perfectionist streak. The Court Jester, 1955, in which Kaye had extensive on-location sword training, is a good example of this kind of pressure. His obsession with accuracy in the comedic parts occasionally led to conflicts with Melvin Frank, the film's director, and Basil Rathbone, his co-star. However, the resulting film showcased Kaye's distinctive blend of physical prowess and comedic timing, revealing that his obsession with perfection played a significant role in his achievements. Danny Kaye was an expert language learner in addition to being a hilarious guy. He engaged in more than just conversation, he also played alongside them. Changing his delivery in The Court Jester was a breeze for him. He had the mannerisms of a prince at times and the ignorance of a fool at others. He wasn't pulling a fast one, but it did enhance the comedic value of his act. Communicating with others through their native tongue was his greatest pleasure. He tried his best in every place he went. He would converse in French with anyone who spoke the language. He would change to Italian if they spoke that language. It wasn't flawless, but it brought joy to people. He continued to walk the stage farther. Once upon a time, he conducted an orchestra by babbling incoherently in a Germanic dialect. Somehow the bands managed to get to him. To him, it appeared to be a genuine language. He had a magnetic presence that captured people's hearts and minds in ways that mere words couldn't express. There was a subsequent period of flight. He aspired to be a pilot and loved airplanes. In the late 1950s, Kaye made the decision to learn to fly after seeing his friend do it. He began his aviation career with a modest Cessna 150, but he soon progressed to larger planes. His journey culminated in his mastery of flying an AAR jet. You needed a high level of expertise to pull that off. He enjoyed flying for pleasure and also utilized it to assist others. In 1968, while working for UNICEF, he flew a Learjet to 65 towns in just 5 days. He did the work himself and didn't merely donate money because of his fame. He wanted to improve things. As a reward for his exemplary service, Learjet's father appointed him vice president. The fact that actual pilots held him in high esteem belied the fact that it was merely a title. The next step was to prepare the food. It was just a pastime at first, but Kaye gave it her all, as she did with everything else. In his spare time, he did more than simply cook. Another thing he picked up was famous chefs taught him the ins and outs of Chinese and Italian cuisine. Behind his house, he constructed a dedicated kitchen complete with powerful stoves designed to cook authentic Chinese cuisine.